Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. Summer's coming now, so that is official. I've just announced that after winter being with us. So what have the arts done for us? I actually put what have the cultural industries done for us, because you wouldn't have come if I said the arts. It sounds better, doesn't it? Cultural industry sounds better. I once had, I'm going to name drop, I once had coffee with Jonathan Miller. Everyone's going, no, don't know who he is, no idea. He hung around with Peter Cook and Dudley Moore and is a very famous theatre director. And I once had a cup of coffee with him and he said to me, what's the cultural industries? Culture, he said, that's the kind of thing they put in a Petri dish when you've slept with the wrong person. Which I thought is not culture at all, it's the arts. So anyway, what have the arts ever done for us? Well, of course, it's done quite a lot, and I'll just see if I think it's that. So the first question is, leading question, what is the nation's favourite pastime, okay, or amusement? What amusements do people like to spend their time? Does anybody a guess on that? Depends what website you work. It is indeed shopping. Now, if you look at me with my clothes choice, I don't do much shopping. And increasingly people aren't doing it. So what are our town centres going to look like when the retail's sector is kind of smaller or online? Well, we're going to want to do things, and probably the arts are part of that. And the arts doesn't matter. Despite our best attempts to ruin and kill the arts, they always bubble back up. So I'm going to take you back, just a quick talk about history, particularly theatre of the arts, so you can contextualise it, okay? So we'll go back a little bit in time to the Big Bang. So at the Big Bang, what happened is that all the atoms were very closely knit, and then everything threw out across the universe and created the universe. And then the atoms then turned to each other and went, wow, that was dramatic. And they said, yes, it was. And then they said, what else can we do to keep that level of drama in our lives? And so, shortly after the Big Bang, the atoms got together and created the arts. That might not be scientifically true, but I like the story, okay? So the idea was that the arts were there, and the Greeks did Greek theatre, and they put masks on, as you can see, and it all looks very intense, and lots of stuff about spirituality, making sense of the spiritual world. And then the Romans, that's a Roman theatre, sort of moved it slightly from spirituality to basically lots of sort of sex jokes. If you read a Roman comedy, they introduced basically carry-on films were derived from the Romans. But there was a case of trying to entertain and send up people in society, so it became spiritual, and then the Romans went, let's start laughing at society, making sense of things. And you probably can't see this. This is obviously in a mist. But this is actually travelling players. There is a cart there. And then theatre started coming, particularly in this country and in Europe, coming into people's lives and telling stories and exchanging stories. And they go and sit with the communities and go and tell the stories to somebody else. And they would set up a stage, and that's Commedia dell'arte. And it became very kind of high art and using different forms of masks, but sharing stories to make sense of the world. And then we go right up into time, and the company I run, the Natural Theatre Company, where does that come from? Well, do you know, that was a sense of community as well. And we do interactive stuff where we go in and we don't do stuff in theatres, we go to people's communities to work. And that was, you can just about see that was a sort of event. And the descendant of what the Naturals were doing is things like Glastonbury Festival. And actually going into communities and working with communities, and generally, if you can see that, hanging around and looking cool. As you can see, that was a major thing about the arts. I don't own a tie. Oh, I own one, which is a black one for funerals. But we don't. If you go to an arts meeting in a tie, people go, what are you doing? So we just generally look cool, and that's why I've got the cool hair. It is cool, okay? It's like a stock clock. Every 10 years it comes back in fashion. So this is basically some street theatre that the Naturals do. This is a man with a leaking suitcase with water running around, taking the mickey out of high-status business people by, that's all of us, including me, by having a briefcase that's dribbling money. That's the pink suitcases, very early picture from the early 70s. And they all link up and they make a nice visual thing. So the company, we have a big building. So I was saying to Tom, when I took over the company, it was going like that. And they said, you know, should we just stop doing what we're doing? And I just went, but you own a building. Why don't we make the building work for us, which is what we've done. So when I arrived, it was making £4,000 a year. Last year, it made 40,000. So we've increased that tenfold. We got the commission at the Millennium Dome, and that was a piece we developed for them, which is clock heads. And these pieces weren't being done anymore when I arrived at the company. I went, look, we've got all this capital, we've got all this stuff we can churn back out and recontextualize. So one of the things arrived, I don't know if you can see, that's the Roman baths. When I arrived at the company, in their desperate attempt to save the Natural Theatre Company, they started doing the odd character at the Roman baths. We now have 2 characters every single day, and at the week, in the summer 4. So I've kind of quadrupled the amount of work we get at the Roman baths. So that is our major client in terms of money. But also, we've been developing other ways of working with cultural organisations and historical organisations. So we were out at Jersey a few weeks ago, working with the National Trust there. And yesterday I was at Bristol Cathedral, the day before I was at the SS Great Britain, looking at various other projects we can work with. We have a participation, that's our flower pot piece, and that's Mark, our participation manager, going into schools and doing workshops and teaching people about our work. We have a disabled part to our company. So Caro is 100% deaf, and Karina is partially blind. I'm blind in one eye, and she has the same blindness in both her eyes that I have in one. So if she ever says, I can't see that, I go, yes, you can, stop lying. And so that was, we had this whole thing about villains are always disabled. So it was quite a provocative piece. We've been building on the Roman baths, we've been doing heritage work. So this was World War I project, where we put a field hospital into Queen Square. So we decided this is a new element of work that I've been developing with the company, and that was funded by the HLF. That funding's finishing, and lots of people are now paying for that work. So it was a really great bit of investment. And we use youth theatre, local community people to create a field hospital in Queen Square on what was the coldest day last year, which was really annoying. We developed tours. So this is the Jane Austen tour, and that's actually what we did out in Austin. And it's a show called Austen Undone. And the premise is that Jane Austen has written a novel, an early novel, which is the early draft for all of her other novels. And it just comes to life around you. And we start talking about it, and then the characters start appearing, and you basically all get pulled into the novel. So the reason we were at the SS Great Britain is that we've just put on sale yesterday's tickets for Shakespeare Undone. So we have the same premise that we have a lost Shakespeare that is the first draft of all the Shakespeare. And what we're going to do from that is create an education module to go into schools. Because if any of you go back to schools, we're probably all of an age, they're teaching like they taught us. But for anyone, I have a daughter who's dyspraxic, who sits there going, no, don't understand, don't understand. I have a very highly achieving son who just sits and stares out of the window and just sort of assimilates it. And I just thought, actually, we need to get into schools and make Shakespeare active again. It's not a written text, it's something that's living and breathing. So we did that, and that's corporate work we did. So we took 45 people from Mystery Dining in Bath, and we did a flash mob with them for their Christmas training party. And they loved it. That's some of the work we do. Nude people, flower pots, chromatic characters there. We take all over the world. That was a new piece we did, and you can see that that's hippies. Greyed out hippies. That is actually me at the back. The idea was that the spirit of the 70s has gone from Glastonbury. So we went to Glastonbury. We were doing it, and somebody came up to me and went, "We need you to be coloured in again," which I thought was exactly the reaction we want. And it was actually, we won't get into the politics of it, but it was the morning of Brexit that we did that the vote came through. And there was a certain attitude there, and it sort of rang in with that, which was quite good. We have our studio, there we are, which is a beautiful space. Please hire it and come and bring your companies to do stuff. But it's a really nice space, and that's working full time at the moment. I mean, it's literally working to capacity, to the point where I said, we're doing too much work in the studio, we need to release some of it. So that's a bit about what we've done. So I'll just have a look at the sort of transferable skills that we've done. So, interesting thing about cultural organisations is when you run your businesses, you're trying to make profits. We're trying to create cultural capital in a way. So we're not always trying to make money. We're trying to have a body of work that has a significant impact. And a lot of people go, "What? I can't understand that." But that's what we're trying to do, is make a difference. So a lot of arts organisations, including the Natural Theatre Company, is actually a charity. So we work as a charity, and we are an incorporated charity, so we're also a business organisation as well. So we are always trying to create new works of art that will stimulate people. Because actually, that Big Bang thing at the beginning is people, it doesn't matter what happens, people want art. They will create art. This room is full of art. The Glove Factory is creatively designed. This is a creative space. And Grayson Perry, and if you have a chance, you can download the podcast of his Reef lectures, which is brilliant. And he sort of says, well, the arts world is the R&D world for everybody else. And there is an element of truth to that, that actually where art happens, money follows. It's well known. So I said I worked at the tobacco factory. When I started working there, directing the first project there, I went out at lunchtime and I couldn't get anything to eat. There was just nothing there. And then by the time I directed the last Christmas show, if you've been to Southfield in Bristol, where that is, that whole area is full of cafes, coffee shops, and it was a big working space with a theatre in it. There was a bit like this, other cultural industries coming in there, and it brought that whole area alive. And as Jason Perry says, you know, something goes out of fashion, like Southbell, then all the artists move in, and then the gentrification process starts, he says. And there is an element of truth, because it becomes artistically interesting, it becomes beautiful, and work of art goes on. So there's a big argument in the arts, which is very difficult to persuade, but lots of people have done surveys, and they come up with this idea that every pound spent on the arts comes back ninefold to the local community. And there's lots of analysis of that and seeing how that happens, and over a period of time, that's the difference. Over how long does that happen? You know, it's quite a vague thing. But they always come around about this figure between sort of 8 and 9 times. So we have a big impact. We have to understand that. So we know we've got impact everywhere else. And so quite a lot of arts organisations sit there saying, right, I need to therefore have money from the local people to come back in. And I don't take that attitude. I think that's a nice effect going out. So I'm going to talk about how we do the strategy and how I've turned around several organisations, and particularly the Natural Theatre Company, which, as Tom said, was really flying down very, very fast. One of the things I'll just say before I go on to talk about that is that every time we do a work of art, I don't know what businesses you all work in, it's like introducing a new line. If you worked in a car company, it's like producing a new car. Or if you have a cafe, like buying a new coffee machine or creating a whole new line of food. We do that every single week. We're creating that's what we have to do. So we're constantly in research and development, we're constantly developing work. And that is a really non-cost-effective model, it can seem. So when I went to the Natural Theatre Company and I got there, and I got the job partly because I said, you've got a building, why don't we use it? But the other thing is I got in there and it had the same director for 45 years, and I was the second director. So that was difficult. And I think the business phrase is there was legacy issues. Yeah, there really was. So there was an attitude problem. The company had been core-funded £200,000 a year by the Arts Council, and that was most of its turnover. So we were left with very little. We were left with £200,000 turnover, and not much. And then I got there and I opened the order book and I looked at the diary, and there was nothing. There was nothing in it. And then I started ringing some of the old clients, and they said, we've seen it all, we don't want it. Because the Naturals had actually, those flower pots have been, the pink suitcase has been going out for 25 years. And I showed you that picture of the Millennium Dome. Loads of people went there, they'd all seen it. So what am I left with? And at that point I went, what have I done? I can't do this. So I went and had a walk and had a chat with myself. I realised there was actually quite a lot of potential in there. So how am I going to change this round? And how am I going to... I have to, create ideas. Cost-effective ideas really, really quickly. And I have to get everybody on board because they're all with the old director. This is going to be really, really hard. And so the first thing I had to do was go, right, having a vision. Now, when you write business plans, people write mission statements. But a vision is slightly different. And our vision is to create theatrical art without boundaries. That's the vision. It's borrowed, and please go and check out Benjamin Zander from him. And his was music making without boundaries. The idea, so I wanted to say to everyone, there's going to be no boundaries. And that includes yours, the artists. We are going to create new stuff. We're going to find new ways of working, and we're going to involve as many people as we can. And that vision single-handedly helped people turn around and sign up to it. To the point that I think we've lost, since I've been there, three performers, which out of 45 performers isn't bad going. And one of them we've just lost for other personal reasons, but only two didn't come with us. And you know, sadly, I tried everything to get them on board, but in the end I said, this is the vision, are you coming with us or not? And they knew. So basically, having a vision. And then from that, we have specific aims and mission statements. So we have this great aim, and that is that we are going to create intimacy on an epic scale. That's what we've decided. And so how are we going to do that? And our objective at the moment is to find ways that we can work in communities with our professional actors, with community groups, to bring art in an organised way. So we've just won the commission to provide all of the art services in the Summer Valley, Radstock and there. So we're doing an event on the 2nd of June, which is kind of like a village fete, but it's going to be an arts village fete. And there's going to be arts trails and local community groups coming and singing and performing with us. And we're making some art pieces and so on. So that's the beginning of that. But that also ties into our Jane Austen tour. And we're looking at stuff for next year where we'll have tours and we go around and we have artists working and so on. So now everybody's got a shared vision of where we want to go. But that is quite dangerous. And there's a great phrase in there in business. People talk about blue sky thinking. That's, for an actor, you talk to an actor, oh, that's the bit where I stare out of the window and don't listen, isn't it? It's that bit. We do it all the time, okay? So how do we create the ideas? Well, as I said, we're in this constant state of R&D, but we use some improvisation techniques. And let's just try something basically with you on that. So let's just quickly together create a story. See how you get on with this, okay? There's a central character. What's their name?
David.
David, brilliant. When were they born?
1879.
1879. Great, brilliant, okay. And 1879. And where did they live? So Bradford-on-Avon, okay. So we've got that already. Drama is ready. Do you understand? Yeah, it's good. That was really good. You didn't pause on David. You had a little pause on the date because you had a big decision there because you're going to contextualise the story to where it is. So, okay, we're in Bradford-on-Avon. What number house does this David live in?
9.
9. And what's the name of the road?
Stable.
Stable Road. Okay, excellent. Oh, yeah, so that's good. Yeah, Stable. So I don't know, I've just brought that in. Okay, so it's Stable Road, number 2 Stable Road. And who's David married to?
Edith.
Edith, okay. And Edith is the daughter of who?
Louis.
Louis, excellent. Now you sing that as we go on, we're going but you're doing great. We are blue sky thinking. We're just coming up with ideas and we're not checking it. Okay, so now here's the difficult bit. 1879. Who's Edith's favourite novelist?
Oh.
Okay, at which point, yeah, so at which point we go and do some research. Yeah. Now this is why, in the artist world, a lot of the directors are from Cambridge, because they know it all. But then there's a big turnaround. Do you know why? Because people have phones now, and they can Google the answer. So actually, sometimes we have to then reference something like, right, who would be the author at that time? Maybe it's Jane Austen, because she was 50 years before that. It's late Victorian, so we can start looking at other people. And so there's a little bit of fact we give in there, there's a little bit of given circumstance, and there's a restriction, yeah, that we might want to work with. Okay, so we're in that time, we can't go, or we could go into space, or if they start time traveling, there's nothing to stop you doing that, but we might have to do a little bit of, okay, bashing the idea in to fit into its box. But I don't know if that's a good image, you know, fitting into a box. I think of it the other way. I think of it, you've got a skeleton that you flesh out. Does that make sense? And we often think of those restrictions as, well, I can't do that. But if we think of it as something that we build out from, that, if you think about it, that creates more ideas. Otherwise, you're in a thing of saying no. Now, what people did really quickly in that exercise always works. You come up with nice... I was actually giving you very closed questions. If I'd have said, could you tell me a story? We wouldn't have got anywhere because it feels too big. So part of being creative is saying, right, I want you to create that little bit, you create that little bit, you create that little, and we start putting them together. But actually, we had faith in the whole team, did we not? To create that story. And we could carry on and we would create the story. We would create the story. And it's having faith that everybody's ideas will come together. And in this context, you're all listening to each other. And as we know these days, I don't know if you find the same thing, in a world of mass communication, we sometimes don't listen very well. And I was doing an adult class last night, and I did a very simple thing. Part of listening is also observing. And I do a thing where I get people to walk around the room and look each other in the eyes. People find that the single most difficult exercise we do, always, because people don't look each other in the eyes. And we don't read things. Now, so part of the thing as actors is to say, to do that. And when I took over the Naturals, they had set pieces, and it was like working for Coca-Cola. And people didn't actually respond to each other. So I had to do these sort of exercises with the people to remind them, how does the team work? How does the group work? What's the other person doing? Yeah? And of course, we'll come to managing people in a minute. But coming up with those ideas, we build a story. Now, sometimes we do go, nobody did, well, I think when you said the road, you went, stable road. Sometimes that's quite a difficult, it was an open question, wasn't it? But did another name come into your head at all? No. Didn't go at all? You were just going, I don't know. Why Stable Road?
I think because it's the age, and I'm thinking old things.
A stable, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Brilliant, yeah, and it worked well, didn't it? So you kind of took yourself there. That's excellent. So, and sometimes I thought, I wonder if you can see a stable out there. Because without knowing it, you start taking in things you've seen. And they start coming back out as well. So an artist's job is actually to be open-eyed all the time and look at their environment and take those stimuluses in and regurgitate them. That is part of the problem with the arts world. It can sometimes be a bit insular. I went to the press night of Romeo and Juliet at the RSC on Tuesday, and we both came out with my friend John, and we knew the director and the designer and everything. But it was great. Go and see it. It's a really good show. But we sort of went, yeah, press nights are difficult, aren't they? Because everybody's really concerned about the industry. And I went, I want to go and see that in 2 weeks' time when it's settled down and the actors aren't just worried about the play, but they've gone out and they've taken away and they've contextualized it into that. And it'll grow. It'll probably be, it's going to be a great show. It's going to be good. But it was still at that point, do you know what I mean? Where the arts world is sort of thundering in on you, and that's all you can see. Sometimes when we say something like, what's the name? Actually, you're going Stephen, John, Brian. Which one's right? And of course, there isn't a right one. There isn't a right one. And actually, just allowing a name to come out. And one of the things we talk about in the arts is body think. So the bit in your head that goes, well, I think what it has to be, just doing it. And that sounds really dangerous because, okay, I'm being filmed here, but actually, if you do in a rehearsal room, we don't allow cameras because if you do something, it's all right to fail. It'll be, okay, that didn't work, let's try something else. If we write something down, I annoy everyone because I write everything in pencil, if it's ideas. I get used to it so I can rub it out, because it doesn't matter. You can then move on, you can then create something else. Do you see what I mean? So there's a bit in our brain that says no, not that blocks us. And when we do improvise, a lot of what Natural Theatre Company do is improvisation. And we have to stop the actors from saying no, not that. And instead saying yes and, or no but. And I think that's a good sort of business thing to do in a team, to say yes and, or no but, to offer an alternative. So in strategy, I have a real problem, because I'm a charity, because I have a board. So if any of you want to join our board, I'm looking for I want a younger board, because boards tend to be quite old people who take a limited interest and then come to board meetings and say no. And I'm developing a really good progressive board, but it's easy. No doesn't get you anywhere. Another bad board is a board that says yes all the time. Because they're doing the same thing, they're not doing the job. They need to say, no, but, have you thought about it? I wonder if we could do yes, and maybe we could do this as well. And yes, and oh, actually, I was talking to somebody the other day, and we could fund that in that way. So ideas are always about, and this is basic improvisation work, and if you get interested in this stuff, there's a book called Impro by Keith Johnston, where he describes, and it was a lot of my training, that you can improvise absolutely anything if you say yes and, no but. And I think that's a really important thing. And so I had to bring that culture into the naturals. So the sort of final thing on that, we have a philosophy of fail and fail better. and learn from that, and learn from failures. And I think that is really, really important in the arts. And so the strategy we have is to enable that to happen. We have a vision, we have some aims, I have pieces of work. I put aside £15,000 for development last year, didn't use any of it. Because actually we had so many projects where we go, we could develop that there, because I was taking the yes and attitude. Oh, the National Trust want to do that. Yes, and we can also develop this at the same point. So we attained all of our development ambitions last year without spending any of this reserves money that we got for development. So we're spending it this year instead, which is the Shakespeare Undone project. We'll lose money initially, but we'll eventually make money because there'll be an education project, there'll be things that go into schools. We can take, the National Trust have already asked for it next year in Jersey, so we'll go back with that and so on. And so it's going to have a sort of 10-year time to bring its money back. So the strategy is be creative, fail and fail better, and have a financial plan for it, which I'll talk about in a minute. So the thing about strategy is that one of the things is that I could have, that is really dangerous, what I've just said. You probably said, how does that work? And so we go to our management books and we see graphs like that. And we go, no, I want to do that because that's a graph. And that looks good. It doesn't mean anything. There's just a red arrow and there's some things on there. And we did a mock training session for the National Housing Federation. They've asked us back. They loved it. And the whole idea was that he said, the head of the National Housing Federation said, none of my people will get up. They won't talk to each other. They won't do anything. So I said, we can do it. And we started with one of these. And this was one of the graphs. And they were all going, and by the end, we had them all walking up, joining in with us and putting hats on. And so they've asked us to do it again. There's another one. This is a great one. This is a real management one. That's truth, knowledge, and belief. In the arts, that's red and blue make purple. That's what that is. I don't know why truth, knowledge, and belief. I don't know what that is. So that's that. This one's great because that looks good, and you can write that in your book, can't you? That says splat. And that's actually for Key Stage 4 writing essays. So don't do that. This one, that means nothing. That means absolutely nothing at all. This is real. Anybody work in retail? So we went to a sales conference, me and Elle, who's my company manager, and said, well, how can we sell the company more? And they talked about this. And this is the sales submarine. So I got the giggles quite early on in the session, and about 6 people around me then got the giggles. And there was a lovely Australian woman, she just went to me, she goes, this guy's being paid for this? I can't believe it. She got really angry about it, but we thought it was the funniest thing ever. Bonding and rapport, upfront contract, paying, budget, decision, fulfillment, and post-sale. Okay, I don't understand why it's a submarine. If anyone knows, please tell me. So we don't do that. And then there's that. But actually, that's what we do. 6 principles of innovation process. Yeah, we listen to what a client wants, understand the problem. We organise ourselves. Well, we're very organised anyway. We get creative. We love that. We experiment, what I was saying. Although we fail and fail better. But we keep doing this bit. We go around here lots. We experiment. We go back. We create. Then we go back to the client. We don't go back to the client too early. And then we sort of say, we don't design. We just do it. Our favourite clients are the clients we've worked with for a second time. So we worked for the Veterinary Association doing their summer party last year, and they were going, you need to do this, and it won't work, and all this. And she'd seen us at Glastonbury, and she was very, very controlling. And then this year she rang up, she goes, yeah, do whatever you want. That was it, phone down. There's £10,000, do what you want. Brilliant. So, and that's what we did. So we do that all the time, so that has got some sense. So yeah, it's all for us. Managing strategy is about managing ideas. And the thing I say to us, all my team all the time, they come with an idea, and I went, right, we've got no problem with ideas. We've probably thought, people come, why doesn't your company do? And I went, yeah, we thought about that, but we haven't got the capacity to do it at the moment, or there's not the market for it at the moment, or there's not the time for it at the moment, or I don't have the right actors for it at the moment. Or, very often, it's, yes, we're trying that. You'll see some of that in that project. We're doing that there. And we're starting to work with visual artists, with musicians, to open up cross-arts work, working more and more in education, working more and more in corporate settings like this. And that's why I've been asked to do quite a few of these sort of talks and working one-to-one with smaller organisations, because we do this with not very much money coming in. So we manage ideas. Now the difficulty also, I'm sure you're all sat there going, all this ideas is great, because the thing we depend on the most is the creative people. So one of my most important jobs is who I work with and how I work with them. So we went to Jersey, I'll let you into a secret, for the National Trust. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. Have you seen that film Spinal Tap? That, but in theatre, okay? Everything went wrong, including it snowing, so we couldn't get out on the flight. And then we got the media called it the beast from the east. They love that, don't they? Beast from the east? It was ridiculous. So we were supposed to be doing this outside. It was so cold in Jersey that we did the first one out, and everyone was so cold, nobody could even laugh. So we got, right, we've got to change the route. We've got to do all this. We had to change the route. We got there and found that one of our bags hadn't arrived. And so then we were chasing on the aeroplane, then found out that somebody hadn't put it into the van when we rang on Monday morning. So that was great. So there was tension in the team, and I was having to go, it's all right, it doesn't matter, these things happen. Inside going, who did that? But going, it's fine, it's fine. And then we got it sent out by UPS, who then lost it in Bristol. And it literally, and we had to find a way around. Well, how are we going to do this without the client knowing? If they watch this on YouTube, they're going to go, really? What happened is that we then had some spare costumes, and we mustered together another costume, but we didn't have, this is all in Regency period, we didn't have a coat. So I said, right, okay, we have to rewrite it, that you've been to his house, and you were, because there's a whole thing about them going out the night before, but you left your coat and they can't find it, so he lends you the coat. We'll get away with that. So for one performance, we did that. And just before the second performance, the bag arrived. And he literally ran up and put the costumes on, and the correct costumes. We were always trying to find a way around it, improvise a way around. Again, my attitude was yes and, yes and. But with also keeping the cast happy. And then on the day off, two of them got too drunk. And one of them broke a hotel door down, and then there was a disciplinary issue. How do I deal with that? I've just got to keep the team together. I go, we'll deal with it afterwards, don't worry. We'll sort it afterwards. And it's been quite a serious issue, and the guys have been brilliant about it and very remorseful, and we know what happened, and other issues were going on. But I had to keep that going on the whole time. So we had a cast who were then at loggerheads with each other because everything that's happened, stuff missing, having to change the route because it is so cold, and then the client wanting other things on top, and we're barely meaning to keep up. And I then had to stay an extra day. Oh, and we went out with the company manager, forgot that. Who got flu? And so we're stuck in a hotel bedroom with, she went transparent. You could see right through her. So we're managing this situation. And then at the end of it, the client said, you were absolutely brilliant. Best we've ever worked with. Can you come back next year? So all my team were going, it's a disaster. I went, no, it's not. It's a huge success. How often does it work because everything, the wind blew behind us? But there it didn't. Everything was in, and we kept the team together, and we kept saying yes and, we kept working. So that culture of how we manage people is always about positive affirmation. It is difficult, and I have to say, what happened that day was totally wrong. And either you're going to not do that again, or you're not in this company. That's hard, but you have to do that. But managing people, because artists are brilliant. They are brilliant. They put themselves up there, they risk all the time. It's a really insecure world. They're all slightly insecure because they don't know where their next money's coming from. They don't know. but they love what they do. And using that passion, rewarding that passion, helps them come into the culture of the company at all times. I have got the most remarkable, amazing team, both within the administrative side of things, the planning side of things, and creatively. And we will all work together. I think I don't direct as much as nudge. And I look at what they've got. And I just, my thing for managing people is my granddad. He was a lovely man. Never a week goes past when I don't mention my granddad. And I hope that's a good legacy. He's always alive somewhere. And he was a religious man. And he said that it takes £100 for God to make a perfect person. But unfortunately, he's only got 80 for all of us. So when you meet somebody, celebrate their 80 and forgive their 20. And that's my kind of motto for managing people. Right, what's the 80 you can add? And if you've got that 20 missing, can we forgive it? But the key thing I have is that I have to get people with the right value system. So when we audition, we bring people in, I have to check their values. And I always say, I will take a B-class performer, because I can make them an A-class performer, who's an A-class person, but I won't take a B-class person who's an A-class performer, because if they're going to be difficult, they're going to ruin everything. They have to have that same value system of being able to work with people and be creative and positive at all time. So people are a really important part of it. And the other thing in the arts, the last thing I'll talk about is managing money. And the arts and managing money tend not to go together. And I've been asked to talk about this, and I'm still trying to wrestle with this because I don't get it. Because I did maths A-level. My dad was a mathematician. I did economics A-level and then changed to go and do the arts. So I've got that kind of brain. But the key thing is about the value of what you're doing. And what people do in the arts is say, but it's got a value that's non-numeric. So therefore I don't have to worry about a budget. But I think of it as, you might know about, as investing. Everything is about investing. I talked about it being R&D. So if we do this, that will have a financial impact several years later, or might have a creative impact, a cultural, giving us cultural capital. So we started doing the Jane Austen tours on a loss. And we started to create it. We lost a lot of money on the first one. The next year, a tourism organisation called Cultural Destinations gave us some money to develop that model a bit more. And then last year, it started making money for us. And now lots of people are looking, and it's getting us in. It's also, we know people are looking at that project and going, what else do you do? And they're getting us to buy into the organisation. So long-term thinking is essential. Understanding what might have a financial impact later, but also pricing everything up, but on a non-profit basis. And just saying, okay, I can pay for this. And we do a lot of work with corporate clients. So really tough job. In a month's time, I've got to go to Athens for a millionaire's birthday party. We've got 6 performers going out. And I said, would it be a good idea if I came out to check they're all right? And they said, yes. Funnily enough, the same happened for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix as well. But no, in all seriousness, that was really glamorous. I'm going to the Grand Prix. I was basically dragging costumes around a racetrack. But it was that sort of project will give us a little bit more money to enable us to do some of the community work and everything else. So it's all worked out beforehand. We need to get this many projects at this amount, and then we can use that to create some education work, and that work that we believe in, doing community work. And then you can have an interesting portfolio. So one day, about a year and a half ago, we were working with ex-homeless people for DHI. We were working in a special needs school with severely disabled people, Fossway with disabled people. We had a party going to Annabelle's, which is the nightclub for the rich and well-connected. And we were also entertaining Prince Edward, all on the same day. And there's not many arts organisations that do that. And my belief, part of that culture thing, is that in terms of the spreadsheet, in terms of the budget, is that actually a really influential thing happened to me before I started this. And that's when the Arts Guts came in, all of the arts directors got together and said, we're at the centre of the communities. And I'd worked for half of those theatres, and I thought, no, you're not. But we really are. And I think if the arts really believe it talks to everyone, and I say this to all my crew, and say, look, we can entertain Prince Edward and somebody who's homeless. If it really talks to everybody, and do you know what it does? but it's kind of losing that sort of fear that people won't accept the art. So we've therefore got a product that has got a very wide audience base. Some can pay, some can't. So we ask the people, and we're upfront about it, you will pay at a premium price for the other work we're doing. And you know, most people go, great, I'm happy to do that. And they will. So that's the sort of budget model for that. The other thing about managing the money and the budgets is that we spend most of our money on people, which is, if anyone works for the Internal Revenue, a nightmare with VAT because we can't claim it back. So we have to roll that into the issue as well. Because in the cultural industries, it's nearly all people. So most of your money, and it's about managing people and rewarding them correct. You will all know that lots of people want to be an actor. So the big problem we get is people saying, well, can't they work for free? No, they can't work for free. You pay peanuts, you get monkeys, and it's true. You'll get people who aren't good. I pay above equity rates. We look after people. They have good accommodation. We look after people, and I get really good actors who are committed to what we do. Actually, if they did it freelance and just did one-off day, they would earn more. But I will offer them quite a lot of work in the year, so that the understanding is that we pay slightly lower so that than if you were doing it freelance by yourself, but it's a regular amount of income, and there's a lot coming in. You've also got lots of things you can offer. You can come and work with us. You can come and use our studio and all that kind of thing. And it's a really good trade-off. So paying people is really, really important, and I don't take that market approach that there's lots of actors, so because I want the best. And so we have to pay the correct amount, and that's part of what we do. And that brings in our budget a huge unknown, which is competitors offering their work for free. And increasingly, that is becoming universities, because they're doing placements. Have you noticed this? And they're setting up this and setting up that, and they're offering one-off things for free. So when they go, right, we want more of that, and we tell them the price, everyone goes, but we got it from free from the university. So people working for free to build their portfolio up is a major problem for us. So when I was saying, what did I do with the naturals? And I was looking, right, where could we get the money? That's why we've started looking at leisure and looking at tourism and looking at heritage, because there's a lot of research to be done there and a lot of work that a lot of people can't copy. Some of our other stuff has been copied. In fact, I've just had a difficult conversation with someone who's been using our images on their website, and I said, but that's not your intellectual property. So we've agreed that there'll be a link to our website on there, because then that's great. That's a win-win situation, which is what I'm looking for the whole time. So that's the whole thing about managing budget. So I could go into more detail on that, but it is a risky thing in the arts because the money is not plentiful. But it's about being honest with clients and sitting down and go, what is a financial win-win situation? What is your price point? And we say no more often than not. And we've got a full diary because we say no, because we don't take stuff for free. So that's that. Again, that's our motto. We're passionate about theatre making without boundaries, and the budgets and the strategy is worked out to enable that to happen. And over 5 years, we've become successful in that. And we are now a very stable, sought-after arts organisation with a great heritage, because I never got rid of that, and the legacy that was there before. We've celebrated that. We've got new work. And we're working increasingly in the corporate sector, in community sector, because we fundamentally believe that actually everyone can benefit from working with the cultural industries. And when I say without boundaries, I mean without boundaries, and that's including having no clothes on for our nude characters there. In Slava Palulin's house, we did his party, and that's what we do. So I hope I've sort of just outlined some of it, and there's stuff for further discussion. If anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I think that sums up more or less what we do and our attitude towards managing an arts organisation. And I hope there is something transferable. You've gone, yeah, we do that, or maybe we should do that. You could ask more. Thank you.